Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel, Cracking IELTS 9.0. Today I'll be discussing Cambridge 15 Test 4 Reading Passage 3 of the Academic Reading module. The heading says Environmental Practices of Big Businesses. So let's move to the set of questions now. First we have some fill-ups but with a list. Then we have some multiple choice questions. And then we have yes, no, not given. So without wasting any time, let's jump to the first question now. So many big businesses today are prepared to harm people and the environment in order to make money, and they appear to have no dash. Okay, he's talking about some big businesses, right? These are the keywords, guys. Please note them carefully. So they are prepared to harm people and the environment, right? To make some money, and they appear to have no dash. So they don't have something. What is it? We need to find out. Let's go to the paragraph now. The environmental practices of big businesses are shaped by a fundamental fact that for many of us offends our sense of justice. Okay. Depending on the circumstances, a business may maximize the amount of money it makes, at least in the short term, by damaging the environment and hurting people. That is still the case today for fishermen in an unmanaged fishery without quotas, and for international logging companies with short-term leases on tropical rainforest land in places with corrupt officials and unsophisticated landowners. When government regulation is effective and when the public is environmentally aware, environmentally clean big businesses may outcompete dirty ones. But the reverse is likely to be true if government regulation is ineffective and if the public doesn't care. Let's read the first sentence again. Okay. The environmental practice of big businesses are shaped by a fundamental fact that for many of us offends our sense of justice. So our sense of justice is offended, okay, by the practices of these big businesses. So what does the first one say? Many big businesses today are prepared to harm people and the environment in order to make money, and they appear to have no dash. So sense of justice should be the answer, right? But in the options, is there anything sense of justice? No, we don't have. So what could be the synonym for that? Any guesses, guys? Yes, you are right. The moral standards. D is the right one. So 27 should be D. Okay? They appear to have no sense of justice. Means the moral standard, they don't have any standards. Okay? Next. Lack of dash by the governments and lack of public dash can lead to the environmental problems such as dash or the destruction of dash. Okay, we have a lot of blanks in a single sentence. Okay, let's deal with it one by one. So lack of dash by the governments. So governments don't have something, they are lacking something. And lack of public dash. So public are lacking something. What is that? Let's see. Let's read the last sentence once again from here. When the government regulation is effective and when public environmentally aware, the clean big businesses may outcompete the dirty ones. But the reverse is likely to be true if the government regulation is ineffective and if the public doesn't care. Wow. So lack of means if the government regulation is ineffective. Ineffective means there is no regulation. So regulation is the key word we are looking for here. Okay, and if the public doesn't care, so public, if they don't care, then the reverse is likely to be true. Okay, so what is the synonym for regulation? So is there a word called regulation here? No. So what could be the best synonym for that? Any guesses? Yes, it is E, control. So lack of control by the government. Regulating means controlling, right? So lack of control, E is one answer here. And lack of public In the passage it is said, if public doesn't care. What do you mean by doesn't care? There is no involvement of the public, right? So F is one more answer here. So lack of control by the governments and lack of public involvement can lead to the environmental problems. He is talking about some problem now, such as dash. So in the paragraph he gave one example of the environmental problem. What is that? Let's see. It is still the case today for fishermen in an unmanaged fishery without quotas and for international logging companies with short-term leases on tropical rainforest land in places with corrupt officials and unsophisticated landowners. So he's talking about fishermen now, right? Fishermen with unmanaged fishery. What will happen in case of fishermen with unmanaged fishery? You can have a look at the options now. So what do you think is the environmental problem the author is talking about? Yes, it is overfishing, right? This is the only option related to fishing now. So H is our answer. And the destruction of dash. So they are going to destroy something. What is that? See, and for international logging companies, logging means the tree logs he's talking about, with short-term leases on tropical rainforest land in places with corrupt officials and unsophisticated landowners. International logging company means they destroy the trees for the tree logs, right? So what is the best option that suits here? Destruction of trees, B, right? So B is our answer again, okay? So yes, we got through we got all the answers in the first para itself. So let's move to the next set of questions. Okay, the main idea of the third paragraph is that environmental damage. Okay, he's talking about the third paragraph now. So let's jump to the third para and try to read about some environmental damage. Okay, what's the main idea of the passage? That's the key thing here. Our blaming of businesses also ignores the ultimate responsibility of the public for creating the conditions that let a business profit through destructive environmental policies. In the long run, it is the public, either directly or through its politicians, that has the power to make such destructive policies unprofitable and illegal, and to make sustainable environmental policies profitable. Wow. So what is the main idea of this? So he says that it is the responsibility of the public to create the conditions, okay, for the environmental policies. And in the long run, he talks about it is the public, okay, that has the power to make such destructive policies unprofitable and illegal. So public have to take this step now, okay, and to make the sustainable environmental policies profitable. So people should care more about the environment, okay, than the profits. That's what is given here, and it is the responsibility of the public now. Let's read the options now. So requires political action if it is to be stopped? No, he just gave an example of the politicians. Is the result of ignorance on the part of the public? Environmental damage is because the ignorance of the part of the public? No. Could be prevented by the action of the ordinary people. Oh wow, this could be the answer. Keep it on hold. Can only be stopped by educating the business leaders? No, we didn't talk about the business leaders. So C is the closest one, guys. Okay. Why? This could be prevented by the action of ordinary people, means public. I'll show you again. See, in the long run, it is the public. Public means ordinary people has the power to make such destructive policies unprofitable and illegal, and to make sustainable policies profitable. That's what he means here. So the option C fits exactly the main idea of the third passage. So the environmental damage, it can be prevented by the action of ordinary people. C is the perfect answer, okay? Next one. In the fourth paragraph, the writer describes ways in which the public can. So he's talking about the fourth paragraph. So writer describes ways in which the public can do something. What is it? Let's move to the fourth paragraph. The public can do that. So public can do that. That means it is mentioned in this above paragraph. Okay, by suing businesses for harming them, as happened after the Exxon disaster, in which over 40,000 cubic meters of oil were spilled off the coast of Alaska. The public may also make their opinion felt by preferring to buy sustainably harvested products, by making employees of companies with poor track records feel ashamed of their company and complain to their management. Okay, by preferring their governments to award valuable contracts to businesses with a good environmental track record, and by pressing their governments to pass and enforce laws and regulations requiring good environmental practices. So the public may also make their opinion felt by preferring to sustainably harvested products. So by making the employees, okay, of the companies with poor track record feel ashamed of their company. So here is talking about the companies and the employees, and complain to their own management. Also by preferring the governments to award the valuable contracts to businesses with a good track record, environmental track record. Also here and here, both ways, he is talking about the governments. Here he talks to enforce laws and regulations for the good environmental practices. So reduce their own individual impact on the environment. No. Learn more about the impact of business on the environment. No, it didn't talk about any impact of the business. Raise awareness of the effects of specific environmental disasters. No, he mentioned the disaster of oil spill just as an example, but not to raise awareness of the effects of it. Okay. Next, influence the environmental policies of businesses and governments. Yes, he spoke both about the businesses and the governments in this passage. So D is the closest option for 33. Okay, I can show you again. See, here he talks about employees and their companies. He talks about the governments, and here also about the governments. So basically what he wants to say is the influence the environmental policies. See, they have to, the governments should award contracts to businesses with good environmental track record. Okay, and also the government should pass laws and regulations for the good environmental practices. So he is more concerned about the influencing the environmental policies of both the businesses and governments. So 33 is D. Next one. What pressure was exerted by big business in case of the disease BCE? Okay, now he's talking about some disease here. And what pressure was exerted by the big businesses? Let's read further. In turn, big businesses can exert powerful pressure on any suppliers that might ignore public or government pressure. For instance, after the US public became concerned about the spread of the disease known as BCE, which was transmitted to humans through infected meat, the US government's Food and Drug Administration introduced rules demanding that the meat industry abandon practices associated with the risk of disease spreading. But for 5 years, the meat packers refused to follow these. Okay, they didn't follow for 5 years, claiming that they would be too expensive to obey. However, when a major fast food company then made the same demands after customer purchases of its hamburgers plummeted, the meat industry complied within weeks. Okay. The public's task is therefore to identify which links in the supply chain are sensitive to public pressure. For instance, fast food chains or jewelry stores, but not meat packers or gold miners. Wow. So here he's talking about some disease BCE. Now initially the US Food and Drug Administration asked these meat industry to abandon the practices, but they did not obey. For 5 years they kept on refusing. Okay, but once this major fast food company demanded the same restrictions, then they obeyed within weeks. So this is the impact of the fast food company on the meat industry, right? The public's task is to identify which link in the supply chain are sensitive. Means the fast food industry and jewelry stores, they are sensitive than the meat packers and or the gold miners, right? So what should be the best option here? Meat packers stopped supplying hamburgers to fast food chains? No, there's nothing like that. A fast food company forced their meat suppliers to follow the law. Yes, yes, they did. So let's keep it on hold. Meat packers persuaded the government to reduce their expenses? No. A fast food company encouraged the government to introduce legislation? No, not at all. So B is the best answer. So 34 is B clearly. Right, guys? Let's move to the next set of questions now. The public should be prepared to fund the good environmental practices. He's talking about the public. They should be prepared to fund good environmental practices. Okay, let's read the passage. Readers may be disappointed or outraged that I place the ultimate responsibility for business practices harming the public on the public itself. I also believe that public must accept the necessity for higher prices for products to cover the added costs, if any, of sound environmental practices. Wow. I think we got the answer, guys, right? Did you get the answer? Okay, let me read it more specifically. So let's read this passage now. I also believe that the public must accept the necessity for high prices for products to cover the added costs for sound environmental practices. So what do you feel? Public must accept means public should be prepared. For what? Must accept the higher prices for products means to fund, okay, to cover the added costs for sound environmental practices means good environmental practices. That's it. So the first one, that is 35th one, it should be true, right? The public should be prepared to fund the good environmental practices. Next, there is a contrast between the moral principles of different businesses. So guys, here we should write yes, okay? So I was in a hurry, I wrote true, but you should not write like this. Here we have to write yes, no, or not given, right? So you have to write yes here, not true. If you write true, it's wrong, okay? So be careful. Next one, there is a contrast between the moral principles of different businesses. So he's talking about some contrast between moral principles. So let's read further. My views may seem to ignore the belief that businesses should act in accordance with moral principles. Yes, we got the word. Even if this leads to a reduction in the profits. But I think we have to recognize that throughout human history, in all politically complex human societies, government regulation has arisen precisely because it was found that not only did moral principles need to be made explicit, they also needed to be enforced. Okay, so here in these lines, he is talking about the moral principles, about the importance of moral principles, and the government regulation that can be taken more precisely. Okay, but nowhere in this passage he talks about some comparison between the moral principles of different businesses. No, he didn't talk about any different types of businesses, right? He didn't talk about any types of businesses, and he didn't compare or contrast there. So what do you think is the answer? We did not find any contrast between moral principles. So the answer is not given, okay? Next, it is important to make a clear distinction between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Okay, so what are the keywords? It is important to make a clear distinction between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Okay, let's read further. To me, the conclusion that the public has the ultimate responsibility for the behavior of even the biggest businesses is empowering and hopeful rather than disappointing. My conclusion is not a moralistic one about who is right or wrong, admirable or selfish, a good guy or a bad guy. In the past, the businesses have changed when the public came to expect and require different behavior to reward businesses for behavior that the public wanted, and to make things difficult for businesses practicing behaviors that the public did want. I predict that in the future, just as in the past, changes in public attitudes will be essential for changes in businesses' environmental practices. Wow. I think we got the answer here itself, right, in the second sentence. So what does he say? My conclusion is not a moralistic one. Okay, it's not a moralistic one about who is right or wrong, admirable or selfish, good guy or a bad guy. So what does it mean, guys? What does it mean? It is important to make a clear distinction between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. No, it is not a moralistic one. Means it does not make a clear distinction between acceptable and unacceptable behavior, good or bad guy. That's what he said. It is not a moralistic one. So the answer is no. It is opposing what is given in the passage. So the answer must be no clearly. Okay. Next, the public have successfully influenced businesses in the past. Okay, the public have successfully influenced businesses in the past. So he's talking about past now. Let's read now. So the next sentence itself talks about the past, right? In the past, businesses have changed when public came to expect and require different behavior, to reward businesses for behavior that the public wanted, and to make things difficult for businesses practicing behaviors that the public didn't want. Okay, it means the businesses were influenced by the public, right? See, businesses have changed means influence when the public came to expect and require different behavior. Okay, that's what he says. So obviously businesses were influenced by the public. The public have successfully influenced the business in the past. Yes, of course, that's what is given in the passage, right? Next, in the future, businesses will show more concern for the environment. Okay, he's talking about future now. Let's read further. I predict that in the future, just as in the past, changes in public attitudes will be essential for changes in businesses' environmental practices. Wow. Okay, is it given that businesses will show more concern for the environment? Okay, what does he say? In the future, changes in public attitudes will be essential for changes in environmental practices. So there's nothing given like the businesses will show more concern for the environment. Nothing is given about it. So answer should be not given clearly. Okay, so let's move to the last question of the session now. What would be the best subheading for this passage? Okay, now he's interested in subheading now. Okay, will the world survive the threat caused by big businesses? No, may not be, because we didn't talk greatly about the threat caused by big businesses. No, the passage is not about the threat but something else, right? About the public and their responsibilities. How can big business be encouraged to drive, to be less driven by profit? No, that's not the passage mainly about. What environmental dangers are caused by greed of businesses? No, he didn't talk greatly about the environmental dangers, right? So we are left with only D. Are big businesses to blame for the damage they cause the environment? Oh wow. So are big businesses to blame for the damage they cause to the environment? No, not only big businesses, people are to be blamed, right? People, governments, communities, they should also be blamed for the damage they cause to the environment. So we have a question mark here. Are big businesses to be blamed for the environment? Question mark. So this exactly fits the subheading. It fits the main idea of the passage, right? So 40 should be D clearly. So that is the end of this video, guys. Please comment in the comment section. If you have any doubts, I'll be more than happy to clarify them. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe my video. This will be extremely helpful for the IELTS aspirants. I am sure that if you can follow my tips and tricks, you will be able to score more than 8 bands in the IELTS reading module. So until next time, have a great day. Goodbye.